Each of your statements, which is longer than your testimony, will be available for anybody who's interested. I wanted to point out one thing from Dr. Ebright's testimony, just for those who say, well, lab leaks should be discounted, they don't ever happen. At one point, Dr. Ebright writes, the second, third, fourth, and fifth entries of the SARS virus, this was the first one, into human populations occurred as a laboratory accident in Singapore in 2003, a laboratory accident in Taipei in 2003, and 2 separate laboratory accidents in Beijing in 2004. So for people who say that it's a conspiracy theory that this could have come from the lab, they're discounting our history. The history has had these lab leaks, and so whether or not we'll ever know for 100% certain whether this came from the lab, we have had lab leaks, and we have to realize the potential danger of these pathogens. We didn't get a great deal of time into the answer. We got a little bit into the answer, but each of the scientists we asked today were asked to let us know how we could better supervise or oversee this kind of research. And the interesting thing to me is I think they all worked independently, but they came up with basically very similar solutions. An independent body outside of the funding organizations or those receiving the funding to make the recommendations. Something akin to an independent agency like a nuclear regulatory agency. In fact, I've already been using the analogy when people ask me and say, well, what's this like? And it's essentially, we don't let anybody sell centrifuges to Russia or centrifuges to Iran. There are rules on the export of things. And I think Dr. Esfelt in particular has talked about the security aspect of this. What I would really like to come of this, and I mean this sincerely, is I would like to have a bipartisan bill that comes forward for better oversight. Maybe it's not oversight of gain of function, but maybe includes things that some people consider to be gain of function. Maybe it's more general of pandemic viruses. There's a lot of ways we can discuss it, but the bottom line is I don't think the people doing the research are able to adequately and objectively regulate themselves. And I think having 1 million people die, there should be bipartisan curiosity in this, that we should be able to move forward. So my hope is that your suggestions that you've taken the time to put in writing, you've taken the time out of your busy careers to come here, that these suggestions will become legislation. If we can get a bipartisan bill to come forward, what I'd like is that our people who help us write the legislation can communicate with the 3 scientists here. We're willing to hear from a dozen more scientists, anybody who wants to. I want scientists to be involved in this. But I do think that ultimately the people making the judgment shouldn't be from one small field of science. So some have said, well, none of the 3 scientists there are virologists. Well, I don't have a problem with virologists being part of this, but I do have a problem with them all being virologists. The same way I have the problem with behavioral science being approved for funding by all behavioral scientists. I think that there need to be people who understand science on this. I think there also need to be people on the committee, as Dr. Esfelt has mentioned, that understand bioterrorism and biosecurity. And I think it should be a mixture. I mean, this is something we can talk to the scientific community. And I don't think an absolute ban is what we want. We want is a better oversight of this, but we can't have something where 3 projects have been looked at in the last 7 years. I mean, that means they're not looking. And the fact that they didn't look at what went on in Wuhan, and then some of the folks I asked in committee about this were saying, oh, our scientists looked at it and approved it. Even that's not really true. They didn't look at the research. They just ignored the research. It didn't go before the committee. They haven't been honest. But if we want trust in public health and trust in government and trust in science and trust in research and trust in the NIH and trust in the grants that we give to our universities, billions of dollars, we need to have transparency and honesty. We can't have a committee where the people are cloaked in secret. I mean, what is this? I mean, this is completely insane. So I think we've made some progress. I want to move forward, and I, for one, am open to work with any Democrat in the Senate to make this a bipartisan bill and to make it an even-keeled thing where all the voices are heard, that we don't rashly create any legislation that would hamper science, but that we create something that would have oversight that might save lives. I truly think that 1 million people died in our country, 6 million people died, and I think it was from a lab leak. And I think it's something that we need to have precautions against, because if this gets in, and I think it was accidental, by the way, I mean, no, but I think if we don't do anything, what if this gets in the hands of somebody who actually really wants to harm America or the world, or just some psychopath? What could happen? So right now we're doing nothing and have changed no behavior. We've had this pandemic, and we have changed not one bit of behavior. So I think it's about time we do get together and that we're all curious and that we don't make this about Republicans and Democrats. We make this about how we as a people come together to try to make this world a better place.
If you enjoyed this video, hit like and subscribe to our channel so you'll be sure to see similar videos from Blaze TV with the added bonus of signaling YouTube that your voice and opinion still matters. And if you're looking for more great conservative content, check out one of the 2 videos suggested here.